Welcome back, Alex Hart here for My Heart Sports, and today we're on to the National League Central. It's the 5th edition of our division previews for the 2021 season, and I'm glad you guys are here to join me. But before we get started, please jump down below, give me that like, give me that subscription. I'm begging you. It's going to help this channel grow, and that's what I'm hoping to do this season. Talking baseball all season long, but I'm not going to keep at this too long today, so let's just jump right into it. The National League Central, starting from the bottom with the Pittsburgh Pirates. The Pirates, 58 projected wins this season, the absolute worst in baseball, and really you can't really blame the people coming up with these numbers. They're the worst on paper by far. They got rid of any contract on their books that had any sort of payday this year. Musgrove's gone, Taillon's gone, Josh Bell's gone, so really they did one signing this offseason. We'll get into that right now. So let's take a look at their lineup here. It's a big surprise, actually. A lot of people are talking about Adam Frazier was going to be dealt, and I'll be honest, it'll probably be a pretty big surprise if he's still on this team by the end of the season. They still got Colin Moran, who's, I guess, one of the bigger names left on this team, Gregory Polanco. However, for me, a lot of the rest of these name players are new to me. Anthony Alford, it's a guy that's been around the MLB at least for one season. So with 58 wins, there's not a whole lot to talk about with this bats. If we jump into their pitchers, the one signing here that they made this season, Tyler Anderson, they only paid $2.5 million, and it's their only signing. So there's a lot of talk about how the owner isn't willing to spend any money on the middling kind of players in free agency, so it could be a long time before we see the Pirates able to contend. It's really going to take them getting some good prospects coming through the pipes. Chad Cull at the top of their pitching prospects here, not really prospects, I guess, at this point. He's been on the team now for a number of years. Stephen Brault as well is someone that's been on the team for a couple of years now, but if you're expecting anything more out of this team, it's pretty bad. They're the worst projected win totals in the entire MLB, and very likely, we might talk about this further, but this is very likely the weakest division in all of baseball as well. Next up here, 79 projected wins on this season, we have the Chicago Cubs. 4th in the NL Central. Might come as a shock for a lot of people, myself a little bit included. I don't know if I agree with them coming in 4th. However, that's where they are, at least with the Vegas totals at this point. The Cubs are arguably on the best run in franchise history right now. They've made the playoffs over the past number of years. They haven't had a losing record since 2014. Since beating the Nationals in 2017, they're on a 1-7 playoff run, as well as that's not even including the one-game playoff they lost to the Milwaukee Brewers in 2018. Let's jump into their batting here. It's a lot of the same guys, but they did have one big signing this offseason with Jock Peterson. So far, he's been looking very good in spring training. He's always in the past had trouble with batting with lefties, and for the most part when he was playing with the Dodgers, he wouldn't be getting that opportunity to bat one with lefties. However, it looks like the Cubs are going to use him as an everyday kind of guy, so it'll be interesting to see if that's something he can do. Ian Happ, Rizzo Bryant, Baez, all guys have been on this team for a long time. World Series contenders all this time, and they're still really a big part of the core going forward with this team. However, this might be the last chance the Cubs get with this core. The core is coming up for a contract at the end of the season. Bryant, Rizzo, Baez, all in their final year at the Cubs. It would be hard, definitely if they don't make the playoffs or something like that, have a bad year. It'll be hard to expect any of these guys, if not one, maybe two, coming back for them next year. Pitchers for the Cubs, it's a big down from the years in the past. They've got a lot of new guys in here. Jake Arrieta, he's coming back to the team after a couple years away. He was part of that World Series team. Kyle Hendricks, still the top staple of this lineup. They don't have Darvish anymore. They don't have Quintana anymore. Zach Davies is now part of this team. I think for this team, a big part of the issues in the past was the bullpen. And Craig Kimball is coming into his 3rd season now with them. And if he can't at least turn the page from the past 2 seasons, it's probably going to be a rough bullpen again this year. Craig Kimball, on the other hand, he did start turning the page a little bit at the end of last season, so if he can build off that, at least they'll have potentially someone solid at the end of their bullpen. Other guys you might want to keep an eye out for are Trevor Williams, Shelby Miller. They're slotted in 6-7 right now, so at least there's some depth in this pitching lineup. Should someone get injured, someone struggle, they have the next man up. It might help them get over the hump. They have them in fourth, but I personally don't think they'll be in fourth. At least minimum, think they'll be able to hop over one of these teams ahead of them that we'll get to. And honestly, this Central can be pretty wide open. The projected wins are fairly low across the board, and projected with all these wins, they'll be getting along the Pirates. Every team in here might have a shot at the wild card. Third up here, we have the Cincinnati Reds, 81.5 wins projected for them. And it's pretty much a lot of the same players that they had last year that they made the playoffs, even though they didn't do so well against the Braves. It's a lot of the same guys. One big notable, obviously, Trevor Bauer no longer with them. He moved on to a different team, and we'll talk about him in the next video that's coming out tomorrow or whatever. So taking a look at their lineup here, they still got a lot of the same guys. Castellanos, Votto, who's dealing with COVID right now, but will probably be back with the season. Suarez, Moustakas, all these guys, very solid. Senzel is the guy that's expected to take a step forward in their outfield this year. And Jonathan Indiana, honestly, I do not know who he is. The biggest thing with this offense for me is they don't really have that shortstop. Even though they have Suarez slotted in there on this, at least projected, they haven't had that shortstop. And there was a lot of rumors going around. They were making efforts to try and land Lindor or someone else, one of the other shortstops that were out on the market, but they just came up short. So that could potentially prove to be a big hole for this team going forward. We'll only see as the season goes. Projected starters, they still have, again, the same guys as last year other than big hole Bauer's out. So Castillo, Miley, all in there. Been around the MLB for a long time. Castillo, he's been slowly getting better every season, so he's going to continue to look to take that step forward. Last year, the Reds were considered to be that closet team that was going to make a lot of noise. They made a lot of signings. Everyone was talking about them this year. However, they're not. They're just kind of expected to be middle of the pack, and I don't blame them. They're not on Bauer anymore, and he was a big part of how they even squeaked into the playoffs last year. So for me, I talked about it in the Cubs. This is a little bit slam-packed here, and any team can really fit 1 through 4, and I'm going to keep saying that 1 through 4 could be anyone. Number 2, that brings us to the Milwaukee Brewers. The Brewers were the worst team to make the playoffs last year. They were the only team that had a losing record, and likely will be the only team in a long time with the playoffs coming back to 5 teams per side. So they're looking at that wild card spot again this season. It's going to be harder. They're going to have to take some steps forward, but I think they might have done some things in this offseason, at least bolstering their lineup. A lot of the same guys as last year, but for the most part, teams took a step back in the division, like the Reds. We just talked about the Cubs. They're both taking steps back, so this is their chance to take a step forward. And really, can Yelich do any worse than he did last season? Let's take a look at their lineup here. They got Lorenzo Cain back. He took last season off after opting out for the whole season, so that's going to be a big boost for them. Yelich, he had a bad season last year, batting about 200. His on-base percentage and all that still looked fairly good. He was coming back from a pretty serious injury in his fractured kneecap, so honestly, he can only get better than this, and if he can even come close to his MVP caliber season, this team is, they're going to compete, and they're going to be a lot better than they were the year before. They bring in Jackie Bradley Jr., and that really sets up their whole outfield to be solid. They have another guy on the bench, Garcia, who between the 4 of them, they're expecting Bradley and him to kind of alternate based on the pitching inside, so that's going to be good. All around 4 fielders, solid for them. And jumping down here, Garcia, good shortstop, and it's pretty much a solid bench. Daniel Vogelbach, Pena, they're pretty deep. They're pretty deep, at least on offense, so I'm excited for that. Almost didn't even mention Colton Wong, top of the order here. Big signing, taking them away from their division rival as well, the Cardinals, so that's going to be big. Projected rotation, and I guess is where people start to have concerns when it comes to Milwaukee, but if they can repeat kind of what they were last year, they'll at least get what they need from the offense. Then they're definitely going to get what they need. Woodruff, Burns, both had very good seasons last year. I think Corbin Burns was one of those guys that came out of nowhere for a lot of people, but he had an amazing year. Falls off fairly quickly here with Anderson, Hauser, and Lindblom, but this is their second year, third years for these guys, so now that they're starting to get some experience, might prove to be good for them. Their bullpen always been very strong in Milwaukee. Josh Hader can come in and just blow the side away. So at least if they can get the offense going, the pitching can do what it needs to do, and they can get to the bullpen on those 3, 4, 5 nights, then I think the Milwaukee Brewers are in for a decent season for sure this year. So the projected winners of this division, St. Louis Cardinals, projected 86 wins over the course of the season. And given that they're going to be playing a lot of the Pirates and the other teams in the division are taking a little bit of a step back, it's fairly low, and it's the lowest win total of any of the division leaders of all. So that has me thinking that this division, at least projected at the start of this year, is the weakest in baseball. That being said, the Cardinals were active. They made a huge trade and took the baseball world by storm when they picked up Nolan Arenado, and personally one of my favorite players to watch. A lot of people talking about how he's not going to put up the kind of numbers and that kind of stuff because now those numbers are all from when he was at Coors Field, and we all know how the ball flies out there. However, more digging I realized that sure, his home numbers might come down, but from the most part when people leave Coors Field, their away numbers go way up because the hangover from playing at Coors and then traveling doesn't exist anymore. So at least look for that this season, and Arenado very well could put up the kind of numbers he did when he was in Colorado for sure. Let's look at the rest of the lineup here. They got Tommy Edman, Paul DeJong, Paul Goldschmidt still in here. We didn't really talk a lot about him last year. He's in there. Goldschmidt, Arenado used to be National League West crushers. Now they're joining forces here, which is awesome. I'm excited to really see it. Molina, Tyler O'Neill, and Harrison Bader, all staples of the St. Louis Cardinals lineup for the past few years, and Molina for a lifetime, right? If we look at their bench here, Matt Carpenter, they have him projected on the bench, so that part kind of surprises me. But I guess with Arenado and Goldschmidt, where do you really put him? I guess maybe train him in the outfield, infield. I don't know. He'll probably be helping people get days off and stuff like that. So that's one question I have, at least how they're going to fit Carpenter in this. He's been a big part of this lineup and success for a long time, but I think he is getting a little bit older and probably taking a step back, probably not in his prime anymore. So with these two new guys, he'll be watching from the pine, it seems like. If we go to their rotation, this is really the biggest concern I have with them. And while they're in first, I do not think it's permanent. I wouldn't bet the house on it. I would also like consider any of these other teams we talked about, other than the Pirates, to have a chance at this. Jack Flaherty, top of the lineup here. He didn't have a very good season last year, so they're looking for a big bounce back for him. Adam Wainwright, he's getting older and older, so can he hold it together for the long season? Can he perform anywhere near what he's capable of? I'm not sold on that, at least at this point. Kwon Kim, this is probably the biggest question mark, but possible upside for them. He had an awesome season last year. It was his first time really getting into the MLB, coming over from the KBO. So he's going to have the first time in the MLB having the whole long season, and we know how that can affect people making the transition. So I don't know if he's going to be able to put up the numbers he did last year. And then quickly after that, falls off. Carlos Martinez, John Gant. Martinez has slowly declined. Some might even say quickly declined after his good seasons a few years ago. They're missing two pitchers that they were really hoping on this season. Dakota Hudson, Mike Mikolas, both not starting the season. Hudson seems to be out for the whole year. Tommy John surgery seems to be a common trend, and it gets more and more every year, yada yada. But Mikolas, he has a chance to come back this season, it seems like. So from what I looked at, he might make it back, and then I'll at least bolster their starting rotation. And there you have it. St. Louis Cardinals projected number 1 in the division, and I guess you kind of got to give it to them. They got two likely the best players in the division with Goldschmidt and Arenado. Big signing. Pitching for me is a big question mark, and this whole division is wide open. If you ask me, I would put the Cardinals as number 1, Brewers number 2. I would probably give the Cubs a better chance. They'd probably be in 3 slot for me before the Reds, but even a chance at second, and honestly even first. So those top 3 for me, very interchangeable. Then Reds, and then obviously for me, Pirates. Just like everyone else, I have the Pirates in the very bottom, and there's not much else you can say about that. And that pretty much wraps up the NL Central. It's a quick rundown. I try to do it quickly so that you guys can get through it. Give you all the key points that I can at least find, and I try to get a little bit on each team for you guys. Let me know if you agree, disagree with anything I said. Maybe I missed something very important. Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget, like, subscribe. we're going to be back for the National League West, as our next video should come out tomorrow, as well as we're just going to be pumping these videos out all season, talking about the baseball season, seeing what we like, what we dislike. So join along, and hopefully we get some voices from all the different teams, and we can all have a nice, happy season. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next video.